Welcome to ATD's Talent Development Leader podcast, featuring monthly conversations with the greatest influencers in the talent development field. We cover the latest trends, hot topics, and future focused ideas that current and aspiring TD leaders need to know. Learn more by visiting www.td.org and searching for Talent Development Leader podcast. Today, I'm joined by Karen Hough, founder and CEO of ImprovEdge LLC, the first training company to combine improv with neuroscience and psychology to create business training with an improv twist. ImprovEdge has served 1 million people on 5 continents. Karen is an international keynote speaker, Amazon bestselling author, recipient of the Silver Stevie Award for Most Innovative Business of the Year, the WNBA Inspiring Woman Award, and the WBENC Pitch Pivot Grand Prize. She is the author of 3 books, creator of the Yes Deck, a Yale grad, avid hiker, philanthropist, has 3 grown kids, and lives with her husband and Labrador in Ohio. Hi, Karen. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Anne. It's so nice to see you again.
It is. I know Karen and I were connected 10 years ago, which seems like a long time, but we got to work together on her ATD Press book, Go With It. So it's been fun to reconnect with you now and kind of keep collaborating in 2025.
Cheers.
So today we're talking about resilience, adaptability, and thriving through change. Change is a topic that is always top of mind for talent development leaders and probably every human, but we hear consistently on surveys we send when we try to get a pulse check on what TD leaders are being challenged by, what's a top priority for them. Change is always one of the top 5 to 10. And especially this year, I understand our audience is learning how to navigate some significant and unprecedented changes in the industry. I know ImprovEdge is deeply committed to empowering people with the skills needed to successfully navigate change. I love how your website says, the world is evolving at an unprecedented pace, bringing disruption, uncertainty, and unexpected challenges to organizations across the globe. When your leaders are not improvisational, this constant change can lead to disengagement and stalled growth. The solution is fostering the agility and confidence to adapt, think on your feet, and embrace the unknown. Can you elaborate on this, Karen?
Absolutely. And I would say that this issue, I hope that people don't feel alone because that was certainly an issue that we saw a great deal in COVID, is that people felt like they were the only ones struggling with certain things. And one of the things that came out of it is that we are all together in a lot of our struggles. And understanding that is really powerful. You know, ImprovEdge has worked across 5 continents, both in person and virtually. And we find that many of the issues that you were just bringing up are ubiquitous across organizations large and small. So when we're really talking to them about how to create that confidence and a different kind of capability in a leader, for me, really, there are 2 main parts. And we work with our clients on this as well. Number 1 is having a very aware and intentional leader. That really comes from development, as our TD professionals know, right? When you have someone who has been assessed, who has had feedback, who has had coaching, who has had awareness raising workshops, who has learned that their techniques are not always the best techniques to use, especially in difficult situations, they become more and more aware of the resources available to them, the people available to them, and other ways to think about how they cast a shadow, especially situationally. So that's number 1. And I wonder how that resonates with you, Anne.
When you mentioned self-aware and informed, I think intentional. I mean, this keeps popping up for me. And when we talk about leadership, kind of what's new, what's different, what's changing this year, these themes are just everywhere, I think. Self-aware leadership, especially. Yeah.
Correct, correct. And I think often what's happening is that, especially newer leaders, but I'll tell you, we found it in very experienced leaders too, that they are dashing through life and work, and they're doing the hardest work that they can, and they really don't understand the effect that their words and their actions have. So, intentionality, understanding the impact that you have, and then thinking about it before you address a situation. So, that's one of the number 1 things that we really focus on. And then the other one is around the cultures and processes that will embrace experimentation. So when we're working with clients around culture, we're really talking about Oops to Eureka. So that is one of the principles of ImprovEdge is Oops to Eureka.
Mhm.
We defined it and categorized and trademarked it in our initial research over 20 years ago with the Wharton Business School. And it's the idea that stuff happens, mistakes happen, and issues come up. And even wonderful things like maybe the biggest client you've ever had is a surprise. You didn't see it coming. So in that moment of oops, how do you respond? How do you manage yourself and the world around you so that eventually it does get to Eureka? And for us, Eureka is learning more from going through that. It's advancing what you were doing. It's maybe realizing you've got to let go of one thing and move toward another. It's endlessly an interesting topic for us. And in improv, of course, the reason that it was so important and came to the fore is that if we're not always experimenting, if we're not always trying something, and by the way, things happen on stage all the time, we're never going to get better as performers. And we're also never going to get better as professionals. One of the examples I'd love to bring up, we've done a lot of work with health systems. There was a major health system that we worked with, and they finally instituted what they called the Queasy Eagle Award. That is because they realized that they were so risk averse. They were so unable to take on experimentation. And this is funny for a scientific community, right? They're based around it, that they're a research organization and they really need to have patents. They had something between 4 and 10 patents one year, and they're created to turn out a lot.
Mm.
Once they instituted the Queasy Eagle, and basically what it was created for was to allow that health system to say, hey, this group of people or this researcher went forward on this path. And it was great for a while, and then it really stopped working, and we had to let it go, or it didn't work out the way we thought it did. So we want to award them for their ability to really try something to see if it was going to work and understand that sometimes you have to walk away. And the next year, after they instituted that understanding, they had 200 patents.
Wow, that's awesome. And you mentioned the idea of culture to creating that space for experimentation where failure is okay. I mean, I can see where you go from 4 to 10 to 200. I mean, that's a system change, right? That's a wide scale disruption. That's really cool to see the results there. This also reminds me, I mean, these are kind of proactive practices too, that when I think about when those times of change hit, if you're taking these, making these practices part of who you are as a leader, intentionality and self-awareness, experimentation, I can imagine that change isn't so hard, right? You're always doing this, right? Or you're able to kind of ebb and flow a little easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a person who's always loved change. It's been part of my DNA. So learning how to then bring others along with me, I think that's really the challenge is that even if a leader feels comfortable in that, they have to understand that most people don't. And being able to create, for example, change processes or ways that that person or that team can feel grounded even in the midst of change. For example, one of the tips we give a lot of our leaders is just have some traditions or processes that stay the same. So if you're going through a merger, if you're going through a major process change or a policy change or whatever could be going on in your organization, if you always have gotten together on Monday mornings with coffee or if it's virtual around what's going to happen this week, don't get rid of that. Or if you always send out a big text to the whole team about somebody's birthday, like make sure that you keep doing those things because it allows for structure within what feels often like chaos to people.
Mm. That's great. That's a really helpful practical tip. I'm unfortunately not one of those people who loves change, but I'm getting better the older I get. You mentioned this earlier, and it's interesting as we're recording this podcast, we're about officially 5 years out. It's March now, 2025, 5 years from the first days of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mm.
In a lot of ways, it feels like yesterday, but I think it's interesting the research that has already come out of that time and what we've learned from it. The McKinsey article, Raising the Resilience of Your Organization, reports some of that research from those early days of COVID.
Yes.
A couple of quotes here I'd love to hear your thoughts on. In 2020, 2021, they reported that healthy organizations exhibiting healthy, resilient behaviors were better able to withstand major disruption. They could invest in talent and culture amid disruption and for the future. Companies that focus on building resilient operations, teams, and leaders may gain a two-way talent advantage. Such adaptable environments are more likely to attract top talent who will have a greater chance of success and in turn be more likely to perpetuate a cycle of resilience. So, from all of that, a couple of things here. It sounds like an agile organization is a resilient organization.
This is also where we have to, I think, get a little bit tactical, which is something I love to do because we can talk about ideas all day and say, do you need an agile organization? If you don't know what that looks like, or from a behavioral standpoint, how do we get anywhere? So we have a deep belief that agility and resilient comes from connection and true teamwork.
Mm.
So Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, UNC Chapel Hill, right? She did this research years ago. She was able to extrapolate that people who had more social connections were more physically resilient. In other words, they got over the common cold like twice as fast as
Mm.
somebody who was socially isolated. And we also saw that again repeated in COVID, which was terrifying and interesting. So,
Mm.
key here is that we have, especially in the United States, we have that whole bootstrap thing going on, right? Oh, you fell down. Hey, get yourself back up, get out there again and go for it, right? Which we believe is the individual's job to do. And the truth of the matter is, the reason that we can ever do that is because of the circles of people around us. We're not resilient because we pull ourselves up. It's because there are probably 10 people at work, 3 people at our place of worship, 12 people in our family, 2 on our block that went, "Hey, you need to rest. We're going to take care of you. You're okay. You're going to be all right," or whatever needs to happen. Like,
Mm.
this was tough. You need to mourn, or you need to get through it, or you need to process it. You need to eat or sleep. And then when you're better, they're actually the ones lifting you up and saying, "All right, go back out there and try again. And we're here if you need us." And then in return, when someone else needs you, you are there for them. Those virtuous circles are what truly create resilient individuals, and they also create resilient organizations. So, if a leader is looking around and the teams don't collaborate, if you are highly siloed, for example, if you don't have projects that raise the awareness and context of the mission across the organization, no matter how large the enterprise is, you don't have an agile and collaborative organization. So the more that you can find ways to, and we even love recommending things like just make sure there's always cross-functional training for promising leaders. They should know all about the organization. Your hypo leadership programs should always have people from all over the place so that they get to know each other. There's a huge home builder that we're working with right now, international actually, and they bring people from every division, whether it's land acquisition or building or sales. So all these people meet each other and then they go, wow, I had no idea how much I had in common with the people in land acquisition. And now I have a friend that I can call who lives all the way across the United States, who's dealing with the same personnel issues I am. And suddenly they have a collaborative, sort of supportive atmosphere, and they know they're not alone and they're not siloed.
So interesting. I never personally made that connection to the importance of connection in the sense of resilience and adaptability. And what a like a business case for that, essentially, when you think of what that can do for an organization. How can organizations start to build resilient behaviors? I'm sure it has something to do with that culture of connection, or that must be a part of it.
For sure. And I think that on some of your other podcasts, I've heard some of your great guests talking about this too. And I really feel like there's a couple of things for me that always stand up. And when we're talking to TD leadership or leaders in other parts of the organization, whether it's the C team or if it's the head of sales or whoever we're working with, leaders need to exhibit the behavior they want to see. It's just the truth of the matter. If you don't see something in your organization, you have to do it.
Mm.
And that means then also asking the people that report to you who lead others to do the same. So, for example, if you have a big initiative, a very high level idea, you've got to take the time to drive it down to, well, what are the behaviors that I want to see every day in order to make this happen? Well, if the highest level leaders aren't collaborating with their colleagues, why should their reports do that? Or why should the people from other divisions do that? You need to be collaborative, understanding, empathetic, willing to butt heads now and then and resolve it in a good collaborative way, right? We sort of want to drive the idea that behavior is what drives results. It's got to start where people are looking the most. The other one, of course, is in functional teams. As I said before, silos just kill collaboration and innovation. Organizations that are highly siloed continue to struggle with innovating, and everyone needs levels of innovation, whether it's saving a nickel over here because we were far more efficient and somebody saw an opportunity or a great big idea. It all leads to us being a more profitable, meaningful, effective organization. So I feel like, there's little things that you can do in functional teams. You can mix
Mhm.
up where they sit. We just had a great organization that we work with. Actually, we've worked with them for a couple of years. They're a 3PL, so they're a logistics provider, and they're in many places around the United States. And so they started mixing up where people sit on the floors because it used to be very highly regimented that certain teams sat on certain floors. Now, it was very disruptive. So again, we were talking about how do we keep some things the same so that people can feel comfortable having to move to a new space or be around different people, but they're finding efficiencies that they didn't see before. That's been exciting. In addition, I talked about cross-functional rotation, which I love. I really think that interdepartment development is great when you have different people meeting each other for whether it's development programs or whether it's going to conferences together. Anything you can do to mix up those folks can be especially effective. And I do think in particular, when you make these efforts at the high potential level, and that's where the future of the organization is. Those high potentials, if they stay motivated to stay with you, if they feel like they're being developed and they're meeting exciting, interesting people and getting a chance to try different things in the organization, you'll be able to retain that important talent.
Harkening back to the idea of, the leadership setting the tone, right? Kind of from the
Mhm.
top down, and how that's just a barometer for whatever else happens on your team. And I can think about the past two, bosses I've had, and my current boss is just fantastic. I mean, he defines collaborative, and I see how that has helped our team really gain the influence we've needed in the organization to get some hard things done and just to have a good overall reputation. It's just been so key for us, and kind of how we in our own little microculture as a team have become connected to one another and kind of resilient ourselves.
That's really cool, and I'm so glad that you brought up influence because, again, if you have influence only within one part of the organization or only have connections there, that's really problematic if you need help. It sounds like you've got a great leader who collaborates with you and encourages you to know more about other people around so that you eventually have more influence. If you need
Yep.
to ask for something or you really need to push for something, you know that there's a give and take there with somebody who knows and trusts you.
Absolutely. So a little earlier in our conversation, I mentioned the book that we collaborated on for ATD Press back in 2017.
It was so fun. We launched it in Taiwan. Really cool. Huge ATD conference there. It was really, really fun. So it was an exciting time. Yeah.
The book is called Go With It: Embrace the Unexpected to Drive Change. Much of the ideas, studies, and tools in that book are still very much applicable today. So, can you share with listeners the cycle of change that you unpack in Go With It?
Yeah, you bet. It's one of the methodologies that we use in organizations that are undergoing change. And it's a four-step process. If you think about a wheel or a circle, it starts with prepare, it moves to play, it goes to think upside down, and then it goes to change. And it's a wheel because you always have to keep coming back to all of those different aspects. You've got to start with prepare and then move on. And sometimes, as in change, you may suddenly lurch from prepare all the way to change. It can happen. So understanding what underpins it can be very powerful. So prepare is something that improvisers are always doing. We're always preparing for another show, even when we don't have a show. When I first went into tech, it was a little surprising to me that people weren't always preparing for a big sale or always preparing for a big presentation or always preparing for a rollout of a major initiative because it's sort of like being an athlete. When we talk to professionals, we say, do athletes just show up at the event, sort of take off their jacket and run the race? No,
Absolutely not. So much training.
so much training, so much training, so much preparation, and it goes way past just the fact that you warm up before you perform. It goes to just the months and constant sets of preparing, and I feel like all of us should think of ourselves as athletes in training. We should always be thinking about, am I staying up to date on all the best ideas? Am I preparing myself for difficult situations? Am I practicing how to be a more effective professional? Am I laying the groundwork with connections? Hopefully you never ever have to leave your organization or leave your job if you really love it. You'll just keep moving through the organization. And If you ever have an issue, do you know a lot of people in different places that you can connect with?
Right.
So it's sort of a way of keeping yourself and your organization highly prepared. Are you always working with your team to make sure that they can deal with situations, that they have the skills that they need? So preparation is something that we always do. And it's funny, I just got a comment, and the other day from a client, and it had never occurred to me. And you know, when you say things for years and you assume people are kind of coming along with you, they said, now, you always say that improvisers rehearse. What does that mean? How in heaven's name can you rehearse if you have no script? I realized, oh my gosh, they don't realize that we rehearse the format, which is a little like what we do as professionals. Like we never know the exact details of a situation. As an attorney, you may not know the exact parts of a matter that may come up. And you're always practicing the process of dealing with, talking to the clients, talking to a judge, preparing the papers. You have the process down so that no matter what
Mhm.
the content is, you can handle it. The next segment is play, and it's my favorite.
I'm most intrigued by this one. I'm trying to play more. I've learned through my life that when I lean into the playful, spontaneous side of me, I'm just my best. I'm a better version of myself. For me, for my family, my energy is better, all of it. Nothing specifically now that besides playing with my kids, that takes a lot of time and I love it. But I think it's more of a mindset maybe for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. And I think that's also some of the power that ImprovEdge brings out, just to tip my little hat there,
Yeah.
that we institute play. Now it's meaningful play, it's researched play, it's play, for a reason. And it allows people to enter a different space. They laugh, their body relaxes, their endorphins flow, they're able to think more clearly, they see
Mm.
things differently. And Dr. Stuart Brown is one of my favorite authors. He's done so much research around play. If you really want your mind blown, please do read his book, literally called Play. And it's around the idea that we as a species need to play. As human beings, we are evolved because we play. It allows us to basically experiment, as we talked about at the top of our time together, and create ways of handling situations. Children who are in sports or who play together are practicing it how to do that later on a
Mhm.
different level. It's exciting to look at how deep his research was around the necessity of play. And I think I make the example in the book, Anne, of, an engineer has a problem and they're working on it at work and can't solve it and can't solve it. And you know how you chew on a problem and you just can't get it fixed? And so suddenly they happen to take a vacation. They're on the beach playing with their kids, and she comes up with the answer right there and making a sandcastle. And it comes to you because
Mhm.
you've relaxed into a different situation. She's stacking sand and goes, "Oh my gosh, that's the answer." Does that
Yeah.
help you understand it more?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess for me, running would be that's absolutely a form of play for me, and that's when my mind is able to get those ahas a lot.
Exactly. So the next step is, I think, harder. It's think upside down. And this is where you have to really turn things on its head, because you'll feel like, okay, I prepared a lot. We're trying to remain playful and thoughtful, and we're working through this. And now she wants me to throw it all into the air and turn it upside down. Part of it is because when you're going through change, you are having everything thrown up into the air and turned upside down. In a sense, it's asking you to embrace that and also to get ahead of it. So, for example, in an improv stage, we have to surprise the audience. We can't keep using the same jokes or the same ideas. We've got to turn it around and become a character they never would have expected us to, or bring up a situation that's never existed in a story that they've seen before.
Mm.
Keep it interesting and worthwhile. And I think when we try to get ahead of stuff, when we turn it upside down, it's a way of saying, well, let's see, our sales are really great in this country, but they're down in this country. Well, it's the same for the last 5 years. Wait a minute. What would happen if that reversed? What issues would we run into? How would we handle it if these two countries actually flip-flopped? And now we've got huge sales in this one and no sales in the other one. What do we do there? And how do we think agilely, and how do we prepare for a scenario like that? It can be a thought process, but it's also a matter of how do we find unusual ideas? Or
Mm.
one of my favorites that a lot of leaders have found huge ahas with is a little bit like what you brought up. I'll say, how would you solve this problem? Or how would you explain it if you were talking to a 5-year-old? Can you explain what you're doing to a 5-year-old? They often realize it's unnecessarily complicated, that they don't know how to make an elegant answer, that they have to rethink the process, right?
Mind blown. Yeah, that's like when my kids ask me what I do for, a living. Just even explaining that is yeah, it's
Yeah,
tough. Mhm.
yeah. Or to Aunt Mary is
Interesting.
also always very difficult.
Seriously, watching
Okay.
everyone's eyes glaze over.
We're gonna come up with an elevator pitch for you, Anne. It's gonna be really good. I make people become the best versions of themselves.
Yeah.
That's there you go. That's it. And I would say the last step is change, right? Because you're actually always, always in change. And it's the cycle that has to keep going. And it's a matter of, for me, in the midst of change, number one, change professionals are so smart. And those certified people who've made their life out of it are so incredibly valuable to an organization. And some of the things I've learned from them is to be really, really clear. Say, you know what, we have put a process in place. It may only last for a week, but we are going to follow it to the letter this week. And we're going to hopefully see if it will improve our outcomes. We're going to take it
Mhm.
step by step. We are going to have crystal clear communication that we repeat again and again that starts at the top and goes all the way through. And we are going to handle this right now. Please just hang in there with us. And you know what? It might change, but we're going to prepare for that. We're going to play a little bit. We're going to think differently and we're going to try it again. Experimentation.
I love how this is cyclical too, like you said. This is something that, change is coming around over and over and how that's a cycle. Can you give some examples? And you've done a great job of this. Thank you for the practical examples you've provided. But when you think about leaders who are improvisational and really exemplify that, and also organizations who have done the hard work to master this cycle of change, what would you say?
Oh boy. Two people I've had the honor of collaborating with pop into my head. Dr. Bindu Garapati, she has been incredible. It's been amazing to watch her career. She's the chief people officer right now for BetterHelp. She's also a PhD, and she has been through everything from healthcare to an innovative company to where she is now. She is constantly wanting to try something different to get the development of the people in her organization to a different place. We have developed more new material for her than any other client. She'll get recruited away to a new organization and she'll be like, "Oh, it's a different issue. And I know you have this content, and I also want it to do X." And we're like, "Woo, here we go." Right? It's really fun. And she's a builder of things and she wants things to really work for that particular audience. She's willing to
Mhm,
say, I need it customized. I need it specially for this situation. And she's taking it step by step, right? So she'll be like, I'm going to handle this first, and then we're going to handle this, and then we're going to handle this, right?
mhm.
So she's been very inspirational. I think Terrence Morley, who is a leader of development at NBC Universal, has been a colleague for many, many years and just so, so interesting and so innovative. He's constantly thinking differently about, well, how do we leverage what we already have? How are we going to be more efficient and more effective? And then also, how are we going to introduce ideas because there are new trends coming through, as you can imagine, their media and also the people coming into the organization. Having gone through COVID in particular, he and his whole team, Christina Noval, everyone around him was like,
Mhm.
okay, this is a whole different kind of person now coming in as a professional. How do we develop them differently than we did even 2 years ago? Because they've been through something. And then I think I would probably just since it's popped in my head now, and NBC Universal continues to be a highly agile organization. They are going through a lot of change right now. They have been through a lot of change over time, and they are willing to look at it in the face, whatever's going on, and say, something is going to be different. And we have collaborated on many levels with them. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy, and often really challenging because,
Yeah,
again, that industry grows so quickly and so differently. So many new technologies pop up so often.
I love that. I must say I've been impressed by how in the talent development field, how many people are willing to, really with anything, put aside that we're doing it this way because we've always done it that way mentality and just continue to think about if I never did it before, how would I start now? And I think that personally inspires me when I work with this field with TV leaders. So I appreciate those examples. NBC Universal, they're an ATD Forum member. Just
Yeah.
plug that. So very cool. So as we kind of head toward the finish line here of our conversation, would love for you to share one practical next step that our audience might take down their journey toward resilience, adaptability, and thriving through change.
Oh my. Well, I think it has to be to live it. So if you feel like your leadership needs to be more agile, are you also trying to be more agile? Have you ever heard the saying, when was the last time you did something for the first time?
Hmm.
Recently, I sort of sat there and I went, "Oh, wow. I think it might have been coming up on a year since I've done something for the first time." And I'm supposed to really be embracing new things. So I thought about the thing that scared me a lot. I love water sports, but I've never gone surfing. For some reason, and it just scared me and I didn't feel comfortable. And then my daughter, we were going on vacation. She was like, "Mom, you're gonna come do this with me." And so I used my network. I had a person there to help me feel like I could handle it. It ended up being fantastic. So it was outside of work, but it was reminding me about the nervousness and the goofiness and being really bad at something is so good for you to start.
Yeah.
Being such a beginner
Yeah.
is so good because you have to remember what it feels like. And so I think, especially as learning and development professionals, we're so deep in it, we forget what it's like to be a new learner.
That's so good, Karen. Now I gotta do something new and different. Get out of my comfort zone here. Play, experiment, yeah, all of it. All right, I'm gonna set a goal.
There you go. There you go. You and me both. We'll call each other. We'll keep each
Okay.
other
Keep
accountable,
each other
okay?
accountable.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up today, I'm really interested to hear what in your recent research, reading, or work has surprised you lately? Something that's made you pause and think, huh, or aha.
Oh, well, I do so much professional reading, and I just really miss I love fiction, and I love reading for fun. Recently, it took me freaking forever to get to The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. It was a
Mm,
Pulitzer Prize winner by Juno Diaz, or Juno Diaz. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, the author, and I was completely blown away by it. It's about a family that has come from the Dominican Republic, and the book is a very high percentage of the book is written in Spanish, which
mm,
I do not understand or speak, just a
mhm,
little bit. I would say, gosh, probably maybe 10% or more of it. And the brilliance of this writer is that I had Google Translate up sometimes if I really wanted to know the exact meaning, but I didn't need it, Anne. If you can
mm.
imagine reading a book that he contextualized so brilliantly that I didn't need to translate it to understand it.
That is cool.
It was so cool. It was so cool, and it got me thinking, I think sort of like what I just said, it got me thinking about how we forget to contextualize what we're talking about as learning and development leaders,
Mhm.
right? That again, we get so deep into it, we forget to step back and say, "Wait a minute, is somebody completely out and they don't understand the bigger context of why we're doing this? Or why am I even starting this way? How do I make sure that they get it? We can speak a separate language. This is true for all functions. I believe scientists, attorneys, accountants run into this. How do you remind yourself to make contextualization powerful enough that it brings everybody along with you?
Think about speaking to that 5-year-old, right?
Yeah, yes, a
Yeah.
5-year-old for actually like, how do I write a novel that people who don't speak Spanish can still stay with me? It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. Well, now I have to read that, Karen. You've given me a list. This is
You made me give you a list.
my
I'm
own
so
learning.
sorry.
No, it's good for my own learning and growth. But well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure, a joy, and it's been inspiring for me. Please tell listeners how they might connect with you to ask any of their own questions or continue the conversation.
Oh, sure, absolutely. We are on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn under Karen Hough, Improv, and also ImprovEdge is the name of my company. You'll find a company page as well. We love to connect on our website, www.improvedge.com, IMPROVEDGE.com, just like it sounds. It's not ImproveEdge, it's ImprovEdge. So come on over, give us a visit. You can find us there, also on Facebook and on YouTube as well. That's under Improv Edge Video. So looking forward to talking to you, hearing more about your ideas, and collaborating on some improv.
Thanks so much, Karen.
Thank you, Anne. It's been so great to reconnect with you, and I love the amazing work of ATD. So thank you.
Look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you for listening to this podcast by the Association for Talent Development. If you found this show insightful or useful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague.